The year was 1945. Berlin was burning. The Third Reich, once a symbol of terror and power, was collapsing under its own weight. Allied bombs thundered overhead. Soviet troops closed in from every direction, and deep beneath the ruins of the city, Adolf Hitler, the most wanted man in the world, was making his final plans. For years, Hitler had promised a 1,000-year empire, but by April 1945, it had barely survived 12. Inside his underground Führerbunker, Hitler was surrounded by loyalists, maps, and the sound of distant artillery. Witnesses described him as trembling, paranoid, and obsessed with his legacy. He had one question: what will happen to me when Berlin falls? Official history tells us that on April 30th, 1945, Hitler took his own life, a bullet to the head, while his newlywed wife, Eva Braun, swallowed cyanide beside him. Their bodies, it's said, were carried out of the bunker, doused in petrol, and burned by his aides in the garden above. That's the story we've all heard. The story written in the history books. But is it the truth? Let's rewind. When Soviet troops finally stormed the bunker site, what they found shocked even them. There were charred remains, scattered bones, and the faint smell of burned flesh, but nothing that could conclusively prove Hitler's death. The Soviets took what they could find: fragments of a skull, a jawbone, some teeth, and then silence. For years, Joseph Stalin refused to confirm Hitler's death. In fact, he told world leaders, including President Truman, that Hitler might have escaped. That single statement unleashed one of the greatest mysteries of the 20th century. If the dictator truly died in Berlin, why would Stalin, of all people, deny it? And if he didn't die there, where did he go? The Western Allies, the Americans, the British, demanded proof. But the Soviets controlled the bunker site, and they guarded their evidence tightly. The so-called Hitler remains were kept secret in Moscow for decades. No public autopsy report, no verified photos, just claims. By 1946, rumors began spreading like wildfire across Europe. Some said Hitler had escaped in a submarine to Argentina. Others claimed he was living quietly in Brazil under a new identity. And there were those who swore he had fled to Antarctica, to a secret Nazi base built long before the war ended. Crazy stories? Maybe. But there was one problem. No one could prove them wrong. Even the U.S. FBI received hundreds of reports, eyewitness accounts of a man resembling Hitler living in South America. The files, now declassified, show that the FBI took these claims seriously enough to open investigations. They never found definitive proof, but they didn't find a body either. Back in Berlin, the bunker became a mythic place, a symbol of an ending that was never seen. The only known witnesses were Hitler's closest aides, including Otto Günsche and Heinz Linge, who gave conflicting statements about what happened that day. Some claimed they saw Hitler dead. Others said they only heard the gunshot, never saw the body. Even the timeline was confusing. Some said it happened at 3 p.m., others at 4. And yet the world accepted the story as fact. A convenient ending to a nightmare too horrific to continue. But the doubts refused to die, especially when decades later, forensic scientists examined the skull fragment kept in Moscow, the one the Soviets had claimed belonged to Hitler. What they found was shocking. The skull didn't belong to a man at all. It was a woman's. If Hitler's skull wasn't his, then whose was it? This revelation reignited old suspicions. Had the world been fooled? Had the most wanted man in history slipped away right under everyone's noses? Meanwhile, stories from Argentina kept surfacing. Villagers spoke of German settlers with strange accents, arriving mysteriously in the late 1940s. Some claimed a man matching Hitler's description lived in Bariloche, a quiet town in the mountains, surrounded by other ex-Nazis. Photographs began to appear, blurred, unclear, but enough to spark imagination. Was it possible that Hitler escaped the bunker, and the history we know was carefully rewritten? The evidence remains divided. Fragments, testimonies, files, each leading to more questions than answers. But one thing is certain. The truth about Hitler's final days is far more mysterious than we were ever taught. Because if Hitler really escaped, then history's most horrifying chapter didn't end in 1945. It just went underground. In the years following World War II, the world wanted closure. People wanted to believe that Adolf Hitler, the man, responsible for millions of deaths, was gone forever. But deep within the shadows of post-war Europe, something else was happening. Something that suggested the story might not be over. As Germany fell, Nazi officers began vanishing, not just a few, but hundreds. Scientists, SS commanders, doctors, pilots, all slipping through the cracks of chaos. And they didn't disappear randomly. They followed a path, a hidden route known as the Ratlines. These Ratlines were secret escape networks stretching across Europe, through Italy, Spain, and finally to South America. They were helped by underground Nazi sympathizers, corrupt officials, and even certain members of the church. Fake passports, safe houses, and secret ships were arranged with astonishing precision. The question was, if all these high-ranking Nazis managed to escape, could their leader have done the same? Evidence points to Argentina, a country that quietly welcomed Nazi fugitives after the war. President Juan Perón and his wife, Evita, were known for offering safe haven to former Nazi officials in exchange for money and technology. And guess what? Dozens of verified Nazis, including Adolf Eichmann, one of Hitler's top lieutenants, were found living there years later. If Eichmann could hide in Argentina for over a decade, why not Hitler? Let's look at the clues. In 1946, multiple witnesses in Bariloche, a small mountain town in southern Argentina, reported seeing a man who looked exactly like Hitler. He was older, quieter, and always surrounded by bodyguards. Locals said he lived in a mansion near a lake, isolated, guarded, and mysteriously funded. They called him the German with the scar. The FBI took these claims seriously. Declassified documents show reports of Hitler being spotted in Argentina, Colombia, and even Brazil during the late 1940s and early 1950s. One document described a man with Hitler's mustache and posture living among former SS officers in South America. The Bureau didn't confirm the identity, but the fact that the U.S. government investigated it at all speaks volumes. The evidence is divided between facts, fakes, and fragments of human fear. Historians still debate it. Governments deny it, and eyewitnesses are long gone. But the question continues to haunt the modern world. Why do so many lies surround one man's death? Unless there was something to hide? Maybe Hitler died in 1945. Maybe he didn't. But one thing is undeniable. The mystery of his disappearance reshaped how we think about truth, power, and propaganda. And perhaps that was his final victory.